Manish Bapna, President and CEO, National Natural Resources Defense Council. I would now hand over the session to Ambassador Manjeev Singh Puri.
Thank you very much, and thank you. Your Excellencies, let me once again, on behalf of Dr. Dhawan, Mr. Nitin Desai, the Director General and Chairman of TERI respectively, add my voice to welcoming you to the 23rd edition of the World Sustainable Development Summit and to TERI, which as you know is marking 50 years of being around, championing the environment, sustainability, energy issues and climate change in the developing world. When we started off, sir, even many people like me in the government didn't know what these words stood for. And we hunted around Delhi, was there any institution which knew something about it? And someone pointed to a small office, and from that office has sprung this lovely institution where one of the previous Director Generals was the chair of the IPCC when they got the Nobel Prize. So it's an institution, sir, where we are very happy to welcome you. And I want to thank our chairman, Mr. Nitin Desai, who mentioned that sustainability, the marriage of the environment, the planet with development, is something which sits at the heart of what we do. I also want to thank him for drawing attention to the fact that these issues are universal. It's not just because carbon sits there for 100 years. That of course is the case. But it is because the impacts are not just me in my local environment, although lots of actions have to be local, but because it is universal. And it's over time, inter as well as intra-generational. And hence, we are very happy to have you here. Your Excellencies, let me say something on behalf of Dr. Dhawan. Your presence here today in what is called the high-level panel symbolizes who we are in TERI. An institution which stands for the Global South, our partnership with Guyana. Honorable Prime Minister, you mentioned this fact. We have presence in your country, and we have been very privileged to have senior leaders from Guyana address the World Sustainable Development Summit over the years, and at the same time be champions of the environmental cause and the climate cause worldwide. We're very proud of this association and very proud of what you're doing for the world. TERI also quintessentially stands for the Global South. Our work, our association with the small island states is exemplary. We've had people who worked in Fiji, we've had them work in several other parts. So Your Excellencies, having both of you here is very special. And of course, our neighborhood. We, coming from a subcontinental country, must, and it is absolutely imperative, that our neighborhood and we ride together. And this is a common endeavor. And Manish, I want to say a great welcome to you. The Natural Resources Defense Council, one of the world's large environmental institutions based in the United States. But for us, an incredible partner. A partner who even has offices in our midst here, but a partner that we count upon, because we count on them not just for the partnership that they have with TERI, but for what perhaps we can do together in this north-south endeavor for the common good of humanity. So Manish, great thank you to you also to be present. Your Excellency, I am going to ask you, sir, to lead. And of course, you have something to say in terms of a national position of Guyana. We're very happy to hear that. But I just want to draw attention to one or two things which were referred to by you as well as our Honorable Minister and the Vice President in the course of their speech. One starting point is this COP28 in Dubai. Confounding all pessimists. And I must say, let me quote to you The Economist, which only finds faults with you and me always. They wrote the following, and it's worth noting, sir. Let me just quote this. Instead, COP28 defied the pessimists. For the first time, the whole world agreed to a transition away from fossil fuels, but think about this, sir. In energy systems in a just, orderly and equitable manner. And then, Your Excellency, something that is close to my heart, but very important for what you said and what you said in your address here. The call to phase out fossil fuels was both economically infeasibly and politically naive. You mentioned this very fact, as you said, one of the newest major oil producers, Guyana, you're coming onto steam, and what the fossil fuels have done for us and what they still can do for us in terms of a better quality of life for the millions, in fact, if not billions, in the global south, particularly important. Your Excellency, we eagerly look forward to hearing from you in some detail on what your country thinks on leadership for climate action for sustainable development, and how do you think the world itself is reacting to it. The floor is yours, sir. You can use the podium. You can sit here as is convenient to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, members on the stage, audience. It is my great honor to address you today as we reflect on the role of leadership in achieving Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. Allow me first to express appreciation once again on behalf of the Government of Guyana to the Energy and Resources Institute for the invitation extended for participation in this very important summit on sustainable development. I also take this opportunity to commend the Institute for their work in research and policy implementation, which are necessary components of sustainable development and climate action. Excellencies, the world is off track with respect to achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Our progress has been hampered by multiple factors, including the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, food insecurity, energy security, and the increase in conflicts across the world. The theme of this summit is therefore fitting as it emphasizes the importance of leadership, which is critical to enabling effective response to present and future crises, and to get the world back on track towards inclusive and sustainable development, leaving no one behind. Among the urgent imperatives in this regard is grappling with the triple planetary crises related to climate, pollution, and biodiversity loss. Urgent action in these areas requires bold leadership and a shift in mindset. Leadership must be premised on principles of inclusivity, good governance, democracy, rule of law, equality, respect for human rights, and justice. Leadership must adopt a visionary and long-term planning approach, cognizant of the basic tenets of the 2030 Agenda Plan of Action. People, planet, peace, prosperity, and partnership. A shift in mindset must entail the willingness to explore new and innovative solutions to the world's problems, which includes the rethinking of systems, institutions, processes, and mechanisms to make them fit for purpose. Combating the climate crisis requires consistent and action-oriented leadership in three key areas: mitigation, adaptation, and financing. While it is everyone's duty to address climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, the biggest emitters must play their part in leading the way in setting more ambitious targets, because although the poorest countries are the least emitters, they pay the highest price. Addressing pollution and biodiversity loss is also essential to achieving sustainable development and requires prioritized attention, particularly because of its impact on health through the food we eat, the water we drink, and the air we breathe. With the rapid increase in the world's population, both rich and poor countries must come together to formulate policies that guarantee a pollution-free planet, In this regard, Guyana supports the ongoing negotiations for the international legally binding instrument on plastic pollution under the framework of the United Nations Environmental Programme. Moreover, greater focus is needed in expanding our protected areas to promote the conservation of our critical ecosystems in keeping with the commitments under the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Excellencies, Guyana prides itself in being a global leader in climate action and sustainable development in keeping with our international commitments. As a high forest, low deforestation state, Guyana has maintained its forest cover at over 85% and has recorded the lowest rate of deforestation since 2010, being recorded for the year 2022 with a rate of 0.036%. In 2009, Guyana became the first country to create a model to show how forests could be maintained under the Low Carbon Development Strategy. The updated Low Carbon Development Strategy 2030 presents a development model reflecting how the government of Guyana intends to avoid deforestation, while at the same time growing the economy fivefold over 10 years and keeping energy emissions flat. The strategy is based on 4 key objectives: valuing ecosystem services, investing in clean energy and stimulating low carbon growth, protecting against climate action and biodiversity loss, and aligning with global climate and biodiversity goals. As a low-lying coastal state vulnerable to sea level rise and flooding, Guyana recognizes the importance of nature-based solutions in adaptation and resilience building. To that end, we have adopted the mangrove ecosystems as a critical component for sustainable coastal protection. Since 2010, under the Mangrove Restoration and Management Program, Guyana has restored over 500 hectares of coastal mangroves by adopting a multidisciplinary approach. Additionally, Guyana continues to be a leader in the world on forests, with carbon credit sales for the period 2016 to 2030 already earning Guyana some $750 million US. 15% of which goes directly to Amerindian villages, that's our indigenous population. This is because of Guyana's landmark issuance as the first jurisdictional scale carbon credits program in the world, with 33.4 million tons of carbon credits issued to Guyana. Further, Guyana has embarked on an ambitious energy transition through a national strategy that seeks to decouple economic growth from using fossil fuels to generate electricity and develop our low-carbon energy resources to meet growing energy needs. Moreover, Guyana is playing a leading role in food security within CARICOM, in supporting regional efforts to achieve the 25 by 25 initiative, with the objective of reducing the region's food import bill by 25% by the year 2025. Excellencies, sustainable development cannot be achieved without financing. Financing for development remains vital for the transformation of the global economy and the elimination of inequalities, especially the financing gap between developed and developing countries. This gap has been further widened by the crippling sovereign debt, which puts inclusive and sustainable development at risk. It is alarming that in this 21st century, vulnerable developing states are unable to access development financing, concessional financing, and official development assistance due to a unidimensional measure of development that is inefficient and insufficient. The lack of access to climate finance also remains a barrier to accelerating climate action, further exacerbating existing debt distress and multi-dimensional crises for many developing countries. While Guyana welcomes the operationalization of the Loss and Damage Fund at COP28 last December, which is a positive step towards building resilience for vulnerable states affected by climate change, we call for scaled-up efforts by developed countries to honor the commitment of providing $100 billion every year up to 2025, and heightened efforts to secure funding for adaptation and mitigation. We have also called for commitments, including those made 50 years ago, to provide 0.7% of GNI in ODA to be fulfilled. In light of these challenges, the Global South must amplify its voice in calling for the reform of the global financial architecture to make it fit for purpose, to meet the realities of the 21st century and beyond. Developed countries and the international financial institutions must lead in this endeavor and must include developing countries in decision-making to ensure that monetary policies and the governance structure reflect our unique vulnerabilities and development circumstances. If we are to see meaningful change, we must accept that one size does not fit all. To that end, Guyana welcomes the Bridgetown Initiative, which we hope would have consequential value to the reform of the global financial architecture. We have also endorsed the call for the development and the use of a multidimensional vulnerability index, MVI, for the allocation of concessional resources for developing countries, and hope to see it come to fruition. In addition to finance, science, technology, and innovation continues to be a crucial component in addressing our unique challenges. It is essential in facilitating sustainable development, especially in developing countries. Investments in science, technology, and innovations must therefore be scaled up to drive a transformative shift in developing states, to equip them with the tools to solve complex problems related to climate change, food and energy security, as was expressed in the G77 Havana Declaration last September. Excellencies, as we approach the midpoint of the decade of action, the global community must be unified in their approach to bridge gaps, including the financial and digital divide, which are fueling inequalities. At the core of this approach must be inclusivity with a people-centered focus. If a meaningful transformation is to be achieved, we must include youth, civil society, the media, the private sector, unions, academia, and other stakeholders. At the third South Summit in Uganda, in which I had the privilege to participate last January, countries sought to revitalize a sense of unity and the need to bolster South-South cooperation in developing countries, especially in the increasing competitive global environment. At the summit, we achieved an outcome that seeks to double down on South-South cooperation in trade, investment, sustainable development, climate change, poverty elimination, and the digital divide. We are confident that these outcomes can be translated into tangible benefits for our people and planet through collaboration and cooperation. Excellencies, I wish to underscore at this point that guaranteeing a sustainable future for current and future generations must be met with urgent action, bold leadership, and a renewed vision and commitment to achieving sustainable development. The threat of climate change must be met with greater ambition in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and enhance efforts aimed at building resilience through nature-based solutions. Furthermore, financing institutional reforms, inclusivity, and collaboration must be elements that drive transformation, which seeks to close the existing development gaps between developing and developed countries in this decade of action, and to ensure that no one is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you. You made several points, but some of them, I think, are worth making a sort of reiterating. Your Excellency used a word which in our generation used to be bandied about a lot, but the word is extremely relevant even for us today. And I know your own context, and the word is peace. In fact, as a result of that, maybe some of the stuff that I mentioned to you about fossil fuels and what it means, etc., I have no idea how the world would have unfolded, but the interconnectedness of that is something that everyone knows. I can just leave with you the thought of what our Prime Minister said when the big conflict started, that this is no era for war. And this is actually the time if we focus and we looked at this word which you used, be particularly important for the rest of the world, in fact the entire world as such. So thank you, Excellency, very much, very important. We value Guyana's contributions in the fight against climate change, in the negotiations. You've been sterling. Your presence here for us is a matter of great honor. And we really also look at this other aspect. The thing that as of now, with the kind of technologies that we have, we need to work with fossil fuels such that they contribute to development, a better life for us, but at the same time we are able to do things which are able to ensure sustainability in the world. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, Minister Tokatake. Sir, His Excellency mentioned many things, but what are the news reports that we are seeing over the last few months? And let us look at what happened at the COP at Dubai. True, the pessimists were defeated, and thank God for that. But countries which stood up and said, we are in the forefront of the fight against climate change. We are the ones which have the highest targets. Please emulate. And we are the ones who are doing it. Have all been rolling back. In fact, a country with whom all of us have, in some senses, umbilical relationships, were found it extremely difficult in Dubai to stand up and justify rolling back their own climate targets. And yesterday's news mentions that the European Union may have to relook at what its targets in the farm area are. For both of you, Excellencies, come from small island states, states for which global action is particularly important, and those who have been fostering action, pushing for it indeed. I'd like to really hear from you what you have to say to the world, to us in the global south, and to everyone. Your Excellency, may I first ask you, sir, and hand over the microphone to you. Minister Tokatake. If you want to speak from there, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Moderator. Honorable Chair, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I bring warm greetings from the government and the people of Kiribati to you all in addressing this occasion of the 23rd World Sustainable Development Summit 2024. Kamnaperen Maori. Namaste. I'm delighted to be here with you in New Delhi today to join this leadership panel and be part of the journey of making sustainable development a globally shared goal through integrating sustainable development for collective action. For any holistic discussions on the looming climate crisis, it is pertinent to hear the voices of the most vulnerable countries. I am delighted to be here today to represent the concerns my country faces and deliberate on effective global solutions. I also thank the Energy and Resource Institute, TERI, for organizing this timely summit and bringing together a diverse set of stakeholders to discuss issues affecting the health of our planet. I would also like to congratulate the organization as they celebrate their 50th anniversary. It is necessary that both our countries, through official as well as intellectual channels, continue to discuss the environmental issues plaguing us. Innovation, research, knowledge creation, partnership, and leadership will be instrumental in determining the fate of our future generation. Kiribati, located in the Central Pacific Ocean, is a least developed country and a low-lying atoll nation consisting of 32 coral atolls and one raised limestone island. The geological formation of Kiribati makes the island nation to be the forefront of climate change impacts. Sea level rise, prolonged droughts, saline intrusion, extreme weather events. These are not just scientific data points for us. They are the harsh reality that threaten our economies, environmental society, and cultural heritage. Being an extremely isolated island nation, we are mostly dependent on fishing license and face high risk from climate variability, sea level rise, permanent inundation, and marine ecosystem degradation. Resilience and adaptation are not new issues for the people of my country. Our population have been living in a dynamic ecosystem, but it needs global support to adapt and manage the risk of disaster facing local communities, lives, livelihoods, and infrastructure. Yet, despite our vulnerability, I am proud to share with you the proactive steps taken by the government of Kiribati in alignment with the Paris Agreement. Our commitment to mitigate our emission is reflected in the Kiribati legal and policy framework, such as the Kiribati National Energy Policy 2009, Kiribati Integrated Energy Roadmap 2017 to 2025, and the Energy Act of 2022. Kiribati has submitted its second national communication to the UNFCCC in 2013, ratified the Paris Climate Change Agreement in 2016, and submitted its intended nationally determined contribution in 2016. Subsequent to these achievements, Kiribati developed its national targets to reduce fossil fuel use through renewable energy and energy efficiency initiatives, achieving 30% of our urban islands targets and over 50% for the rural islands. The contribution by small island developing nations to mitigate the climate change impacts are negligible given our insignificant emissions compared to the developed countries' emissions. Yet, we are the most impacted nations from the climate change impacts. So let me take this opportunity to call on and urge leaders and parties, as well as countries, especially the developed countries present here today, to make and deliver their commitments to keep global warming to within 1.5 degrees centigrade of pre-industrial levels. As we are moving towards the 2030 agenda, despite attempts at the global level, the performance of sustainable development goals has not been up to the mark and present a concerning picture. The world faces a moral crisis as climate change is closely interlinked with the issues sustainable development goals seek to address. Access to quality education, health care, clean and safe water and sanitation, zero hunger, prevention of poverty, clean and green energy, and gender equality are integral to building a sustainable future. But extreme weather events often caused by climate change cast a negative shadow on sustainable development as well. It is therefore important for the world leaders to recognize the interlinkages between the two and derive policies and ambitious commitments aimed at not only promoting development goals, but act on limiting the global temperature rise. Leaders as well as countries, especially the developed countries, need to play a larger role in ensuring access to technology, resources, and finance. And most importantly, need to raise ambition to take urgent climate action if we are serious to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius for a sustainable future. Nations like Kiribati, which have witnessed the adverse impact of climate change firsthand, have been committed to reduce our emissions, which in fact these efforts are insignificant and meaningless if the developed countries do not commit to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. As confirmed, the first global stocktake at the recently concluded COP28 presents a concerning picture as countries are sliding back on some major sustainable development goals. As the theme of the summit suggests, leadership at the global, regional, and national level will be crucial in taking timely and decisive steps towards meeting sustainable development goals. Small island developing states faces the dual threat of climate change impacts due to the lack of global commitment on sustainable development. As representatives across countries and sectors join me in this panel today, I hope we all can agree that these issues need to be deliberated. Voices of the most vulnerable be heard. Global partnership and commitments need to be forged. Technological and financial assistance are made available. If we seek to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement and Agenda 2023 and make a brighter and sustainable future for our present and future generations, may God bestow upon us all the Kiribati traditional blessings of the Maori, good health, TERI, peace, Auditabamu, prosperity. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, thank you very much. It was really very nice. And thank you for reminding us about things which we tend to forget, which is the food chain, the marine ecosystems, and all of those issues. Your Excellency, the Honorable Minister from Fiji, Sir, the floor is yours, sir. My little request, slightly shorter intervention, sir, because we have apparently a fixed time deadline, which is only a few minutes from now. Thank you, Excellency.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, organizers, ladies and gentlemen. Bulavinaka, and a good evening to you all. On behalf of the government of Fiji, I would like to express our sincere gratitude and appreciation for the invitation to be part of this 2024 World Sustainable Development Summit. And my congratulations to TERI and happy 50th birthday. And thank you for organizing this event and providing a platform for nations to join forces in creating a sustainable future through this year's theme, Leadership for Sustainable Development and Climate Justice. I am one with the Honorable Minister from Kiribati in echoing the realities that we face in the islands. The islands are sinking, and sinking very fast. Our coasts have been eaten away by waves and the loss of arable land due to rising sea levels and rising salinity levels is enormous. So we foresee an increase not only in terms of strength, but in terms of numbers of natural disaster. And here we are talking about it, just like in any other summit that we attend all over the world. Countless forums where we go and talk and talk and talk, and no action. What we want in the islands is action. For the larger countries to live up to their promises. Because when you talk about injustice in terms of the effects of climate change, the minister from Kiribati rightly said, in the islands, we are the least when it comes to contribution to carbon emissions. But we suffer the most when it comes to the effects of climate change. And therefore, our demand is justice. We are right in demanding that the larger countries or the powers that be live up to their promises and not just keep talking about it. We demand action. The crisis faced in Fiji is similar to what Kiribati is going through. Because even though we have high volcanic islands, we also have atolls within our group of islands. And some of these atolls are quickly sinking because seawater is beginning to come through the ground. And in some cases, the whole coast has been lost to the sea. And in some cases, the very middle of the village is now filled with seawater. So this is the message we have come to deliver in this summit. The message that we have come with is that we have had enough of talk and we want action. We want those countries that are responsible to do the right thing and help us. That's all we are asking for. That will be justice enough for us. That will be a big relief. Even though some of the financial commitment that we may be asking for is a bit too much, but I think it is reasonable enough because we are all in this humanity thing together. The planet belongs to all of us, and it doesn't belong to only some of us. As much as you want to enjoy the planet, we also want to enjoy the planet from our side of the world. So if there's anything that, any other message that I bring, or any other message that I want to convey to this summit, I'm just asking that the commitments that have been made is lived up to, so that there can be some relief for the small islands like Kiribati and Fiji, apart from the others that we speak for this evening. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, thank you. And I must say, Your Excellency, in action and justice, as you ask, lies interest for humanity as such. Thank you very much for those very evocative words, very important. I want to turn to the Director General from Sri Lanka, our neighborhood, which is always important for any country and any continent. But I think particularly important at the moment because of not only what they have withstood and what they have come through themselves, but also because in a sense it's a very interesting bridge to what Their Excellencies, the ministers from the Pacific Islands have said, and Sri Lanka itself being an island nation in terms of the actions, etc., that they are undertaking. Mr. Director, may I hand over the microphone to you? A small request. The clock is ticking, and some people are reminding us that we are standing between something else. So, here you are, sir.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to deliver the statement at the high-level opening session on behalf of the government of Sri Lanka at the 23rd Sustainable Development Summit as Sri Lanka's Ministry of Environment. Before we go to the statement, I would like to draw your attention on our economic backdrop. Sri Lanka's economy has suffered continuous setback in recent years, leading to polycrisis in phases now. A build-up of public financing and debt sustainability issues led to economic downturn, and the country did not have the space to recover post-pandemic as rapidly as many other countries. Sri Lanka dealt with debt distress, financial constraints, and declining private sector growth, and was expected to face an economic contraction in 2023. but to now slowly recovering from 2024 to onwards. Therefore, Sri Lanka considered the current situation as an opportunity to rebuild the economy while achieving the sustainable development goals. The government has already started achieving immediate measures such as microfinancing reforms and stabilizing the economy and the social protection reforms as a cushion for the most vulnerable, while also engaging in long-term measures such as cost-effective energy, taxation and other institutional reforms. Additionally, Sri Lanka have pursued economic growth and human development with a focus on reducing carbon emission. The country has implemented measures to enhance resilience to climate change and to mitigate its effect. These efforts include the development of nationally determined contribution NDCs and UNFCCCs that align with the global mission to combat the impact of the climate change. President of Sri Lanka, Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe, launched Climate Justice Forum at the 2022 United Nations Climate Conference, that is COP28, held in Dubai, to gather support for vulnerable nations hit by the climate change-led disasters. The move is to compel advanced and developed countries to look into poor nations hit by the climate change and help them to get over economic and debt burdens by either investing more in green energy initiatives or writing off the debt to ease financing pressure. Environmental and climate justice is a civil right issue. All people should have the agency to live life with dignity. However, climate crisis is causing a loss of lives, livelihood, properties, putting many at risk of food and water shortages and raising displacement and conflict. Climate justice means putting equity and human rights at the core of the decision making and action to climate change. The concept has been widely used to refer the unequal historical responsibility that countries and communities bear in relation to the climate crisis. It suggests that the countries, industries, businesses and people that have become wealthy for emitting large amount of greenhouse gases have responsibility to help those affected by climate change, particularly the most vulnerable countries and communities who often are the ones that have contributed the least to the crisis. Consequently, Sri Lanka has identified climate finance as a possible financing option. The financial flows of the country have been aligned with sustainable development and very famous Paris Agreement according to the country level priorities and needs. Finally, commitment of the government to achieve the sustainable development in focus to reversing the adverse impact of the crisis in order to reduce poverty, elevate human development and ultimately achieve sustainable economic growth while addressing the needs of the most vulnerable of the country. And I would like to congratulate TERI on their 50th anniversary for their contribution to the environment and climate change.
Sir, thank you very much. Very, very deeply appreciated. And I'm very happy to hear that your bounce back efforts will be sustainable and climate compliant. That's really a matter of great pride and happiness for all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, right throughout the evening, you've heard in terms of India and our commitments to fighting climate change while at the same time fostering sustainable development and a better quality of life for our people. I'm very honored that the Honorable Prime Minister of India has issued a message to us on this particular occasion of the 23rd WSDS. And may I request Dr. Vibha Dhawan, the Director General of TERI, to read the message and share whatever words that she may wish to share in terms of her perceptions of the way the day has gone today. Dr. Dhawan.
Well, it has been a great day. It's over 10 hours that we are discussing this topic of sustainability, and starting with Sister Shivani, I think she gave us a lot of wisdom in terms of what sustainability means, and unless and until we ourselves have healthy minds, we cannot think of changing the planet or look towards sustainability. As rightly mentioned in various discussions during the day, that the impacts of climate change, they are visible. They are quite ugly, perhaps worse than what was predicted in IPCC reports. What is also true, the impact of climate change, unfortunately, is not uniform, both in terms of the different countries, how they are getting impacted, and also in a way, how you can, the risk that you can absorb. Like I always quote this, that if there is flood or cloud burst in India, perhaps those who get impacted, they go back 2 generations. But while it happens in a developed part of the world, maybe it's perhaps 2% of their income which they may lose, or even less than that. So therefore, they can recover from the losses much earlier than what is the situation in the developing countries and so on. It's also true that the impacts, as I said, they are not uniform. It's also those who are even facing problem today in terms of meeting the 2 ends meet. They are going to be worse impacted. And as repeatedly said, they were not part of causing this climate change. They are still developing. But I'll go back to what we learnt in the morning, and that is, let's not carry that in our head. So therefore, let's not blame the developed part of the world. Let's also look at, they haven't done it consciously. It is what was available to them at that time. They used the technology, and let's also face it, we are also benefited by those technologies. But what is now important for us is that while we always say that loss and damage fund, or they should pay, very true, but then we don't have time to wait for that money to come. And the action has to be, perhaps was to be taken yesterday, even today is late. And that is what India as a country is trying to achieve. The commitments that Honorable Prime Minister had made, and you have also heard the Honorable Vice President, our Environment Minister, the Power Minister will be here day after tomorrow. We have made very bold commitments, and it's not just making those bold commitments, we are ahead of target in most cases. We are also investing in new technologies like hydrogen, and it goes without saying, the rooftop solar and the way the budget, the interim budget was presented, or last year budgets, it's all towards greening. You look at the state level, many of the states, they are going for green budgeting. The action plan, we are reviewing our NDCs. So we are moving in the right direction, and that's where I'll also say the political commitment. The Prime Minister, I'll just read the message shared by him verbatim, and you'll find that that is again very, very encouraging. So the message reads as, greetings and best wishes for the 23rd edition of the World Sustainable Development Summit, an occasion that also marks the completion of the 50th year of the Energy and Resources Institute. This summit, organized by TERI, has played pivotal in uniting stakeholders from all corners of the world in pursuit of a common goal, sustainable development for the betterment of humanity. Over a period of 2 decades, the summit has evolved into a platform to foster dialogue, collaboration, and action on sustainability and combating climate change. Through the involvement of a number of heads of states, as well as thousands of delegates, the WSDS has catalyzed partnerships and collective action to address one of the most urgent challenges of our times. This year's theme, leadership for sustainable development and climate justice, underscores the need for bold steps, decisive action, and a clear direction towards a more sustainable and equitable future. Today, our country has emerged as a global force multiplier in the fight against climate change. The spirit of one earth, one family, one future pervaded discussions on a wide array of issues held under our G20 presidency too. Be it initiatives like Mission Life that motivate every individual to be a change maker, or our broader vision of Panch Amrit goals, we are committed to build a cleaner, greener, and sustainable future. Similarly, efforts like International Solar Alliance, Coalition of Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, Swachh Bharat Mission, PM Kusum, and PM Sarvodaya Yojana are ensuring that India leads the way towards divesting effective and innovative solutions that champion inclusion as well as the environment. Our thrust towards clean energy, including utilizing green hydrogen and biofuels, also underlines our keen sense of responsibility towards the future. The challenges we face may be daunting, but with courage, determination, and collective action, let's commit ourselves to the pursuit of a more sustainable and equitable world where every individual can thrive in harmony with nature. Narendra Modi. I'll also take this opportunity to congratulate NRDC because it's also their first anniversary in India. So congratulations to Manish and their entire team, and we believe in partnerships, and as Ambassador Puri mentioned, we are working together. They are in TERI, and hopefully we will also be in their campus in United States. So we believe in those partnerships, and let's wish them, our good wishes are with them, and let's walk together miles and miles. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dhawan. Manish, the segue is absolutely clear. This floor is going to be yours. But I just want to tell you, you, right throughout the course of the day, have underlined your personal commitment and NRDC's commitment for the humanity through environment. You've heard now what countries which are really facing the brunt of it have to say. I'm sure there is internalization, but actually the call is that of partnership, collaboration, and that's what we all tend to seek from you. You know, 2 or 3 years back, on this very table at the WSDS, I had the privilege of having Jeffrey Sachs sitting opposite me. And the elections in 2020 had just taken place, and he was waxing eloquent about the changes, and I mentioned to him, so what's the issue? Is it a different part of Manhattan that you think is going to deliver everything? I don't know the actions, but as we head towards November 2024, whichever way we look at it, and even though now the genie is out, and climate action is something that everybody has internalized, the United States has legal obligations at the federal level for pushing climate action. But still, I think for all of us here who are serious observers of global action on this and collaboration on that, what may happen and what may possibly unfold is also something on which perhaps you are in a position to shed some light, share your thoughts. But as we bring this particular session to an end, I want to request you to take the floor and thank you very much for your partnership, your personal presence, and for all that NRDC with Mrs. Bagai and everyone else does for us. Thank you, Manish. The lectern is yours.
Thank you very much for those very kind words, and it's a privilege to be here with you this evening. Really appreciate the partnership with TERI, and I'm also consciously aware that I might be the last thing between you and dinner. So I'm going to make, I want to talk about 3 quick points that I observed that I think we, in the spirit of partnership, I want to make some observations about where I see opportunity. And I want to start with TERI first in this particular summit. I think a lot of foresight was there when there was a space created for how we could actually have voices from the Global South begin to shape the agenda on issues we care about, on issues of climate, biodiversity, pollution. But I think one of the things where actually we could use this space is to recognize that the voices from the Global South are different from each other, and that there's an opportunity here to actually talk a little bit more about how to bring greater coherence and alignment in some of these issues. Let me just point out a slightly difficult but important observation. We are already at 1.5 degrees. We see an existential threat to nations on the front line, communities on the front line. And yet at the same time, we know that development, sustainable development, is an imperative for some of the poorest countries. How do we reconcile those 2 issues? How do we both reconcile the need to phase out of fossil fuels in a timely way and yet provide real inclusive development benefits for countries that have been left out of the process so far? And I think TERI can create a space to have that conversation, because the reality is, out in the international community, there are different voices in the Global South arguing for different things. We need to recognize that and address that. Second, I want to come to India. India has done an incredible amount of work domestically in moving this agenda forward, particularly around solar, around resilience, around consumer behavior, around lifestyle choices, around efficiency. And yet, when India engages internationally, it's uneven. Sometimes India is a very positive, progressive voice, other times less so. And here's an opportunity for India to more consistently lead on the international agenda, because India has a very good story to talk about, and it shouldn't shy away from embracing an even bolder agenda on climate, because I think it is India looking for an opportunity to really lead on a major global issue. This is a space where I think India has great opportunity to do so. Third, let me come to the United States. And the United States, the inconvenient observation about the United States, elections matter. And although it is unclear what is going to happen in November, it is, as most of you may know, there's only a handful of states that ultimately will determine the US election. And in those states, 10, 20,000 votes here or there will determine whether Biden or Trump are reelected. Now, I don't want to overstate the importance, but I don't want to understate the importance either. What the federal government does in the United States matters. There's been good progress made in the past few years, but there's still so much more that needs to be done. Now, the federal government in the United States is a big part of what the United States can do, but it is far from the only thing. There is a lot of momentum at the state level, in cities, with companies. And so the last kind of thought I want to kind of share with you is true for both the United States and the world, which is that the shift is unstoppable. We are moving towards a clean energy, climate safe future. We will eventually achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. The question for me is not whether, it's when. Will we do it fast enough? How will the distribution of benefits and costs be shared? And quite importantly, will we do it in a way that is equitable, that is moral? And that's where the last point I want to leave you with is that a big challenge living in the United States is how we get the United States public, the American public, and the European public to recognize that these issues are not local issues only. They're not only national issues, they're global issues. And that there is a need in the American public, in the European public, in the public of the rich world to recognize that they are in part responsible for what is happening globally, and therefore need to lean in and not only take action domestically, but provide support internationally. And that is what we're trying to do with this partnership. So with that, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be with you today.
Manish, thank you very much. Collaboration, and thank you for underlying this word. Partnerships, implementation, do act, as the Honorable Minister said. I want to thank everyone, Your Excellencies, all three of you in particular, Mr. Director General, Mr. Chief Executive, on behalf of TERI, to everyone, a great evening, and wish you a continuation in terms of the networking that will follow. Young lady, the floor is yours now.
What an insightful discussion it has been with such esteemed dignitaries. I would invite all our speakers to join us for a group photo. With this, on behalf of TERI and the WSTS Secretariat, I extend a heartfelt gratitude to all our distinguished speakers for their valuable insights. With this conclusion of day one, we eagerly anticipate the exciting sessions planned for tomorrow. Thank you and see you all tomorrow.